So we're supposed to talk about who cares about film, and the answer is, I think everybody does, because everybody's consuming so much of it.
Yeah, it's all part of everyone's daily life, and obviously, for our partners, we have to engage with them for their campaigns and create films that are relevant and set the right tone and are the right format and are engaging.
Yeah, exactly. But also for different budgets, being able to use the different mediums that are available to us, like 3D, is it stock, is it filming, is it animation? And how do you address those barriers, those fears? Like, what is the best way to be able to come up with that idea, to be able to tell your story?
And how do we take that big idea and make it into a fully integrated campaign?
How are we going to answer all of these questions, Steve?
Well, let's have a chat.
Okay. Seems a bit silly to even be saying that, seeing as anybody that's watching this will also be watching lots and lots of other video as well. And the majority of internet traffic is video, film. Yep. That's what people consume. That's what people watch. Apparently up to 90 minutes a day or something like that. It is a lot. The question then becomes, who doesn't care about video? And that's just the crazy thing. It dominates the way in which we use the internet and also the way that we make decisions about products and services.
Well, everything that we do is powered and enabled and has some form of film content. Everything seems to have that kind of a video aspect to it, or film aspect to it.
Yeah, and I think, was it 96% of people will refer to video to make a choice about a product or a service. That's an extraordinarily high number.
It's very easy because visuals and film, it's every day. So TV, film, everyone watches TV, everyone watches films. A lot of people's points of reference are from films. So for campaigns, it's a very easy latch on to see and get a point across and a concept across, I think.
And I suppose, there's that question of authenticity as well, isn't there? It's easier to sort of scrutinise somebody or something when you can actually sort of see them moving, or the whites of their eyes.
So the whites of your eyes
then. So is a brand believable, authentic, trustworthy? I guess, a video is going to be a much better way to be able to make those sorts of decisions, and also to be able to get more detailed information.
Like I say, everyone watches it on mobile phones, everything, TV, laptops. It's absolutely everywhere.
You're able to watch and consume anywhere that you go, and we're not sort of constricted by file size. So, even going back 15 years, the idea of being able to watch video wherever you are, whenever you want it. I mean, it's just it's an on-demand life, and video and film is right at the heart of that.
It's absolutely everything, everywhere, all at once.
All at once. It's spoken about a lot that businesses, content marketers feel that they're not using video to its full potential. It's a difficult one, really, because there's many different ways that you could think about that. One is the sort of the skill, like the different amount of skill that is required. I mean, anybody can make video. The tools are all there. It's available, but making video in a particular way, I mean, that's going to have massive limitations on people, which is why you need to go to experts to get particular things.
Yeah, and I think there's always got to be, like you say, anyone can make a video, anyone can make a film. There's always got to be an idea behind it. There's got to be a reason. There's got to be a why. Otherwise, it's just going out there and it's not going to engage with audiences. So as an agency, our job is to advise where that should be targeted, and I think that's how it works with our partners. Marketeers, is that we can then advise that and say, this is what we should be doing, this is how we should be doing, so that it's not just another film on a website. That's always, I think, from my side of things, is the first question when taking a brief, because we generally would get a brief saying, well, we want a film. And the first question is, okay, so who is it targeted to? How do you want to do that? And then you can work on from that and say, well, how do we then make that something else? So you've got your film, but then how can we take that and make that apply to this and this to make it work? Because again, sometimes films are a big spend for some people, and we need to make sure that we can give them return on investment. I would say
spend is a really good one, actually, because in thinking about budget, there's often that misconception or preconception with regards to agencies. It's like, oh, well, how much have you got to spend so as we can spend all of it? But the question is, it's like, sort of ambition versus budget, and the best way to be able to use that, because just because a film is expensive doesn't mean that it's better than something that's a lot cheaper.
And it's the most effective way as well. Again, knowing your audience, reading the audience, and reading how the partner wants to do that and how they want to get that across is part of the trick. I think, we can go from here to here, production value, but it's making sure that production value is used properly and is the right format. So is that live action film? Is that animation? It's got to work. Rather than take the budget and go, okay, we can make a film for you, we have to assess what's the best film that we can make for you. And sometimes that is animation. Sometimes that is a human voice, a human story. That doesn't restrict it, but certainly it's something to consider when you're looking at budgets and thinking, right, how do we cut this up and make something that is going to engage with your audience?
If you're already thinking about making a film before you've even considered the idea, then it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog, and it's really never going to be any good.
Or how we work, and this could be an integrated campaign, and a film is just one aspect of this. How do you take that concept and then apply that to a film? Something that sits in a static kind of print fulfillment, and then say, well, we want that as a film as well. That's something we have to consider. Is like, well, how does that work?
Because that's a really good point.
Work, yeah.
We had an instance a short while ago where we were actually presented with a campaign concept that was already being used for ads and other content and things like that. There is then the challenge of how you then turn that into a narrative that works across a sort of 1 or 2 minute piece to talk about this product or service. And often if you're not there at the beginning, in order to make sure that the two sit side by side and it doesn't look like, well, that film has got nothing to do with that campaign all of a sudden. It is quite a challenge. So there were certain creative decisions that were made that had to be made in order to make the film work. But when we are devising campaign ideas, the film aspect is right there from the beginning, and it can inform design, but the design can also inform the film. But for the two to be working side by side at the beginning is kind of critical to make something that could work as hard as it possibly can. You've got such a small amount of time in order to get somebody's attention. You've got to make sure that you're tailoring the film specifically for that audience. And mobile plays such a large part in it now. As we were saying, that's one of the things that we do try and consider if we're making something quite epic and one from the concept, but also two from practical things like typography. If you want to sort of incorporate quite sort of fine, beautiful typography, like that film that you saw or that ad that you saw on a billboard or something like that, and then you realise that somebody might be looking at it on a sort of 4.5 inch, 5 inch screen, and that music, the subtlety and the nuance that you put in there is being played by somebody on half volume sat at a bus stop competing against traffic. How do you make sure that thing that you're pouring yourself into, that you want to work really hard, for our clients, for our partners, how do you make sure that it works that hard?
You can't constrain that as well. So as a producer,
I want everyone to watch on a 50-inch screen with my noiseless headphones on, please.
But as a producer, I'd be saying we need to consider this, this, and this, and this, in the actual build of it. And then the creatives will go, like you say, I want to be as big and loud and as bombastic as possible. There's that kind of fine line of making sure that we're covering all those bases for someone who's watching, like you say, on the bus with people around them and headphones in, or someone who's looking at it on a great big 4K film screen. So it's very, very, very difficult to sort of measure those up.
Right from the outset, there is a desire to slice this thing up, like a cadaver, and then to use shorter edits for social, because we want 30 seconds to talk about that particular aspect, or 30 seconds to talk about that particular aspect, and also to take the framing and then to turn it up the other way, because that's the way that a lot of media is consumed. We have to listen to and be sympathetic to our audience and the end product for what we need to create, rather than what it is that we really, really want it to be. Like saying about everybody must watch it on a 50-inch screen, for example. There was a good example the other day where we were advised to remove the soundtrack that we lovingly edited, that the sort of beat to beat, the cuts, you know, the timing of the thing, because there's some music that's trending that will likely give our film a lot more of an audience on social.
Yeah.
So I'll defer to the experts on that, but that's okay. You can change
like
that.
I say, and again, when you're thinking about budgets and you start off saying, absolutely, we can make this for you. We can cater for any budget. There's so many considerations along the way that sometimes it's very difficult to make sure that you do hit all those beats and hit all the social edits. Because again, films nowadays, I've got X amount of budget, but also I want a suite of assets that I can share across social, and we need to consider this and consider this, and there's a lot of ways. So it's how do you cut it up, like you say, how do you reskin it, how do you make these things work in various different guises? I think that's part of the trick, and still keep that high concept of the original campaign.
There's always a fear of sort of sounding like you're going to be a bit pretentious when you're talking about things like narrative and emotion and things like that when it comes to films that we make for, you know, our clients, our brand partners, but it is a really important thing. Like, we've learned all this stuff from all the films that we've watched like growing up and our adult lives, and I think that it would be probably a bit insulting to not use all of those tropes and also understanding the way that people react to stories. Like, we know when something's going to feel emotional. We know when the bad guy's around the corner. We know when something's about to happen, or creating suspense, or having fun, when you're supposed to laugh, when you're supposed to cry. But there is often a requirement to introduce emotion into a piece. Yeah. And you've got to draw on the experience that you have and understand, you know, the way that people consume these kind of films.
Yeah, and that's why we're both sat here doing what we do. You know, we both love films. We've grown up watching films. I spent most of my weekends watching films when I was a kid. Probably should have got out more, but it's, you know, it's one of those things that drives you. And if you've got a passion for something like that, however you move ahead as you go into your career, I think that kind of, you take that with you. You take that kind of core element of understanding beats of music and films and things that trigger you into emotions, and that works.
Talking about beats of music, one of the things that bugs me the most is if somebody's trying to make a film where they're cutting on the beat. It doesn't always have to be cut on the beat, but if you're cutting on the beat, if it's like
be on the beat,
if it's a millisecond out, then it's 1,000,000% wrong.
Yeah,
you know,
and it's little things like that.
It's the attention to detail.
It is, detail is retail, and that does make you sort of think about things in a different way and think, right, this has got to be, you know, that's how it's done. That's because that's what you're interested in.
It takes you out of the. It makes you realise, for example, I'm watching a corporate film. Like, what you want is for people to not realise, you know, what's going on. Like, for example, you'd never notice that it was beat to beat editing until somebody gets it wrong, and then you go, oh, because that really jars, because you're trying to do something and then you pulled the rug out.
And the more you do that, and the more you're involved in that level as well. I remember when I started doing some editing, and I would then stop and I'd sit down and I'd watch something like The X Factor, and I noticed how many dissolves and fades they did, and it literally drove me up the wall. But just knowing that thing and knowing how that's done, it just drives you into sort of making, you know, wanting to carry on and do these things, taking that aspect of it and maybe going, do you know what? We saw this in this film that we were growing up when we were a kid, and I know it's not the Goonies, but we could do something like this in the film. So it's nice to go. It's nice to go off piece a little bit. Sometimes you can get, you know, the full back in, and they go, great, we wouldn't have thought of that. So that's just a nice way of taking the things that you grew up with and including it into something that's not, you know, it's not making films and recreating it on someone else's budget.
There's so many levels of subjectivity within creative decisions that are made. You know, like music is one of the big ones as well. I mean, talk about the one deciding factor that is trying to influence the way that somebody is supposed to feel, and yet we still have to appreciate that a lot of people will be watching your film without any sound on, so it still has to work without it. But when trying to introduce emotion into the thing, you know, music is like a really, really important part. One of the, you know, I was talking about a film that we made a short while ago, and the music just really, really worked with it. It really helped the way that you were feeling. It built at the right time. But if we switch that out for the Benny Hill theme, then all of a sudden you're trying to make somebody feel something very, very different.
And it's amazing how different it does sound with different music, and how suddenly something that visually looks great, wrong music just keeps it on a very kind of level. Right music elevates it right up.
But I think the the appropriateness of the emotion that you're trying to do as well.
Yeah.
Like when you're watching a commercial or something like that, and you feel like you're being hoodwinked into being forced to feel a certain way rather than it being authentic. I think the question of authenticity is like a really, really big one, just to make sure that what you're doing is appropriate. Like dialing up the emotions when it doesn't need to be there can feel a bit,
absolutely.
Like the whole thing is
basically taking someone by the hand and telling them how to feel. So it's
that's right.
And it's super, super important, I think. And again, I think that's what, like you say, you bring that and you notice it. So therefore that's key. And I've done films where it's almost the last thing to be thought about is the music. Probably first thing for you as you think about it, it's like, what's the music like? And it's like, I'm like, well, what's the film like? So, but that's super key to go, this is how it's going to sound. I'm going to build around that. And it's going to, that's how you vision something in your head.
I do really love it when the music changes right at the end, when there's a request for music to be changed. I love that. That's really nice. I don't want to put my neck on the line to say what the future looks like, but I think that there's going to be more and more and more video. It's going to be consumed even more. Like we know it is here to stay. It's huge. I
think the future of where we're going is more content, like you say, more content, different ways of viewing things.
You're not scared of AI taking your job just yet?
Not my job. Maybe your job. No, but it's integrated into it, and I think it'll only enhance it. I mean, I think AI, and it's certainly at the very beginnings of things, and we don't know if it's going to go that way or how it's going to be regulated. And we're already seeing things like imagery coming in on Shutterstock and places like that, which are basic and new. How that changes going ahead, I don't know, but certainly it gives us another tool, I think, for things like storyboards. They can generate storyboards and ideas and concepts.
Yeah, that's right, mood boards.
Visuals are pretty quick so if I want this, and this, and there you've got a visual, So those days of sketching things out, and that's certainly still relevant, but it's a lot quicker and it's a lot more productive to say, this is what it look like. And you get buy-in, straight away from certain partners that want to see something visible to be able to sort of vision it.
The main thing for me is like, I think user behavior is the things that are going to change. And we're not going to be able to predict how people are going to be able to, how they're going to consume their media. I mean, if you'd have said, 5-10 years ago, like the way that people are watching YouTube shorts and Instagram reels and things like that, and how that is such an important part of the video content that people consume, it wouldn't even have sort of been a thing. And even thinking cinematically, things like every single Star Wars film is grossing $1 billion. Let's make more Star Wars films and more Star Wars content, for example. Only now there's almost like too much content, and now the House of Mouse are thinking, well, how do we move forwards from here? And I think that's the other thing is you don't just want to be part of the noise. You know what I mean? You've still got storytelling has still got such an important part to play. Resonating with your audience has got a critical part to play, making sure that what you say is relevant and interesting, and you can do something new and different. And that's where the creativity comes in.
And I think as well, you touched on how people view things now. I mean, my viewing habits have changed how I consume content. I find myself watching more YouTube style stuff. The production levels on things like that have gone right up. So I expect to see things. My expectation levels of videos when I watch them are pretty high, because I'm thinking, well, this guy's doing a YouTube vlog and his production value is amazing. It's that expectation levels raised, everything sort of a little bit more polished.
But you still want it to be authentic. I mean, you wouldn't want to go too far.
No, but the way people view things like now as well, and in this day and age where everything is now, I want it now, I want it. See it now, or that is evolving as well. So how we react to that, and how as filmmakers we get content that is quick and easily consumed.
I mean, it doesn't always have to be a 3-camera setup with lots of lights.
No.
It can be a lot simpler.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to break the fourth wall once.
You did.